Have you ever laughed around strangers, only to realize later that one of them was waiting for you to slip away? I remember the morning we arrived at the camp like it was yesterday. The air was crisp, laced with the faint scent of pine, and a distant river murmured secrets we didn't yet understand. I clutched my backpack tighter than I realized, my knuckles whitening. Everyone seemed cheerful, laughing at small talk, exchanging stories about city life and weekend adventures. But deep down, a twitch of unease ran through me. Arjun, the former park ranger, scanned the horizon with a practiced vigilance, his eyes catching every movement. "Stay close," he murmured, though none of us understood why until much later. Meena, busy posting cheerful selfies, waved at the camera, oblivious to the tension coiling beneath the laughter. And Rohit's daring grin made him appear fearless, but I caught the tremor in his hands when he picked up a stray rock to skip across the river. We didn't notice Dev at first. He lingered at the edge of the group, silent, almost invisible. But sometimes, invisible is more dangerous than obvious. Sneha, always documenting, filmed our every step, her camera catching more than just scenery. It recorded the subtle shifts in expressions, the fleeting glances that screamed hidden fears. By noon, we set up tents in a small clearing. Kabir, carrying the old pistol his father had entrusted him with, insisted on checking the perimeter. "Better safe than sorry," he said. But his voice held an edge, a warning buried beneath casual concern. No one questioned him. None of us could have predicted how crucial that gun would become. The first signs were subtle. Misplaced items, hushed voices behind trees, specters that didn't belong. Tara argued with Rohit over directions to the river, but even their bickering felt different, like it was being watched, like every action we took was being measured. And it was. By the time the sun began to dip, painting the sky in bruised purples and orange streaks, the laughter had faded. A tension unlike anything I'd felt before gripped the air. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sounded amplified, like the forest itself was holding its breath. We were no longer just campers, we were prey. I could feel it in the silence. The predator among us was patient, studying, waiting for mistakes. And mistakes were inevitable. I didn't know who to trust. Meena's cheerful facade cracked for a second, revealing the raw fear we all shared but refused to admit. Dev's eyes lingered too long on each of us, analyzing movements that none of us knew mattered. As night fell, I realized the camp wasn't safe. Not the tents, not the trees, not even the circle of friends around the dying fire. The killer was here, already blending seamlessly into our group. And yet, none of us could see the danger clearly, not yet. I sank into my sleeping bag that night, heart hammering, every creak in the forest vibrating like footsteps. One thought wouldn't leave me. Who among us would be gone by morning? What if the person you laughed with hours ago was the one who had planned your last heartbeat? Dawn barely touched the camp when a scream cut through the mist. I bolted upright, every nerve straining, heart slamming against my ribs like a warning drum. Tara's camera slipped from her hands as she bolted toward the sound, but her footing betrayed her. She tumbled across damp earth, skin scraping bark, and the murmur of her panic made my stomach jolt. Arjun's eyes darted around, calculating, scanning. His voice was steady, but under it, a pulse of panic I recognized. "Stay together," he barked. But even as he spoke, we all felt it. An invisible hand pressing down on our chests, suffocating calm. Then I saw her, Sneha, crouched behind a boulder near the river, trembling violently. Her camera lay abandoned, lens broken. Blood streaked across her cheek, fresh and glistening, and she crooned something I could barely hear. He's gazing, pausing." Rohit lunged forward, but Arjun grabbed his arm. "We don't know where he is. One wrong move and..." He didn't finish. None of us had words for the dread coiling tighter around our spines. The camp felt alive with menace. Every fluttering leaf became a warning. Every snapping branch was a heartbeat counting down to a tragedy none of us wanted to imagine. Kabir, clutching his father's pistol, moved silently, eyes flipping between specters. The metallic weight in his hands seemed to vibrate with tension, like it knew what was coming. Mina screamed suddenly, pointing to a tent that had been ripped open. Nothing inside, just shredded fabric and an eerie stillness that made my throat tighten. Someone or something had already begun choosing, and we were all under the same roof, the same night, exposed, hunted. Dev stepped forward, finally breaking his silence. We need a plan. He's picking us off one by one, and he knows exactly what terrifies us most. His voice was calm but carried a sinister edge. I realized then that even the quietest person can feel the cold, calculating pulse of danger, and sometimes the quietest ones can hide it best. Every movement now was a decision between life and fear. We whispered, barely daring to breathe. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the campfire embers. The river gurgled, sounding less like water and more like a throat-swallowing screams. And then, the first deliberate act of cruelty. A message carved into the bark of a tree, letters jagged, a silent proclamation of intent. I know each of you. I'm already inside your trust. The forest felt like it had shifted, twisted, becoming a maze designed to trap, to torment, to isolate. I realized something horrifying. The killer wasn't just among us. He was inside our minds, planting doubt, fear, and paranoia with every step we took. Tara's fallen camera caught movement near the edge of the trees, but when I turned, there was nothing. Yet I felt it, the gaze of someone watching, counting, waiting. By mid-afternoon, no one spoke above a whisper. Every glance carried suspicion. Every step carried hesitation. I wondered, would one of us make it through the night? And even if we did, would we ever recognize safety again? The forest had become a predator itself, and we were the helpless quarry, our bonds of trust dissolving faster than sunlight on the river. What if the hand you reached for was the one that would end everything you loved? The sun had long receded behind the dense canopy when chaos struck. A piercing scream shattered the uneasy calm, twisting through the camp like a living thing. I dropped my pack, frozen, as the group scattered in different directions. Heart hammering, I saw Vara, a 26-year-old botanist with a quiet courage, crouched behind a fallen log, her wide eyes reflecting raw terror. She whispered something urgent. He's here? He's closer than we thought. Across the clearing, Samir, a veteran hiker with broad shoulders and a tactical mind, moved with precision, clutching a makeshift club. His voice, firm yet strained, commanded attention. We can't separate. Stick together, or we won't make it. Every word carried weight, but the underlying fear was undeniable. I glanced toward Anika, a 24-year-old wildlife photographer, who had been documenting the camp with her camera. Now her hands shook uncontrollably. Each snapshot she had taken earlier felt like it had captured something sinister, something that had been silently observing us all along. The killer's first deliberate strike came with terrifying efficiency. A tent collapsed under an invisible force, scattering our meager supplies. A muffled scream erupted from inside, and the smell of smoke and fear filled the air. The forest seemed to close in around us, specters stretching unnaturally, twisting into grotesque shapes that danced at the edge of vision. I realized then that this wasn't just survival, it was a psychological war. The predator was orchestrating panic, dismantling trust, turning every glance into suspicion. Harish, a former military medic with nerves of steel, tried to organize a defensive perimeter, but even his expertise faltered against the unpredictability of someone who knew our deepest vulnerabilities. Then came the twist no one expected. Devika, a 27-year-old botanist with a reputation for calm logic, suddenly pointed to the edge of the campfire glow. He's not just outside, she hissed, voice trembling. He's been moving with us this entire time. He's been one of us. A shiver ran through the group. We froze. Every friendly smile, every casual joke exchanged hours ago suddenly felt like a lie. The panic surged like a storm breaking over the mountains. My chest tightened as I realized the magnitude of the threat. Every step we took could be our last. Kabir, still gripping his father's pistol, scanned frantically. But the killer had vanished into the thick undergrowth, melting into darkness, leaving only fear as a companion. Then came a sharp, metallic sound reply through the clearing, a warning, or perhaps the first kill. Mina's hat lay on the ground, blood-stained, the sight ripping my stomach open. The group huddled together, trembling, silently questioning who among us could be next. I caught a fleeting glimpse of movement near the riverbank. Too deliberate to be natural, too calculated to be random. My mind raced. Who could move so silently, predict our instincts, and exploit our trust? The answer was terrifyingly simple. The killer was closer than ever, already weaving the threads of our demise. By the end of the night, fear wasn't just a sensation. It had become a tangible force, pressing into our skin, into our thoughts, twisting logic into desperation. Every shadow was a threat, every whisper a clue, and every heartbeat a countdown. The forest was no longer a place of nature. It was a labyrinth designed to strip us bare, body and soul. What if the person guiding you through danger was the one sharpening the knife at your back? The moon barely pierced the canopy, casting fractured beams across the forest floor. I could feel the tension vibrating in the air, thick and unrelenting. This wasn't just fear. It was an invasive weight pressing into every muscle, every thought. Nikhil, a 29-year-old geography student with a calm exterior, suddenly froze mid-step, eyes locked on a cluster of bushes that hadn't moved moments before. His voice trembled as he whispered, "Something's not right. It's watching us, counting our hesitation." His words sent shivers through the group, each syllable magnifying the danger we couldn't yet see. Pooja, a 23-year-old wildlife enthusiast, gripped her flashlight so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Every beam sliced through shadows, but darkness absorbed it like a predator swallowing its prey. She whispered frantically, "We need to move, together. He's predicting our every choice." We advanced cautiously, every step deliberate, every rustle a potential ambush. Arjun, still maintaining his ranger instinct, led the line, checking every corner, every crevice. But even his experience faltered against the sinister patience lurking among us. The killer wasn't striking yet, but the anticipation was its own kind of torment. And then the first true horror struck. A distant scream pierced the silence, high-pitched, panicked, and unmistakably human. I froze, my stomach curling with dread. Samir, the medic, bolted toward the sound, but I grabbed his arm. "Wait!" I hissed, voice quivering. "It could be a trap. He's counting on us to rush." But it was too late. The scream had already pulled us apart, fracturing the fragile unity we clung to. Behind a fallen tree, we found Aisha, a 26-year-old environmental volunteer, her scarf shredded, eyes wide with disbelief. She gasped, voice trembling. He was inside my tent. I thought it was a prank. I thought it was someone playing around." The revelation sent panic spiraling. The killer wasn't outside the camp. He was threading his presence through every interaction, every shared glance. Every one of us could be next. Then came an unexpected twist. Kabir, gripping his father's pistol, stumbled backward and nearly fell into a shallow ravine. His hands shook violently, but a sharp realization cut through his fear. The killer wasn't random. He was strategic, exploiting individual weaknesses, testing nerves, isolating prey, and watching reactions with predatory precision. As night deepened, alliances began to fracture. Pooja accused Nikhil of hiding movement she claimed to see, while Nikhil countered that Samir had lingered suspiciously near the fire earlier. The paranoia was a weapon the killer wielded silently, turning friends into suspects, trust into betrayal. I felt it then, like a cold hand brushing against my spine. Devika, a calm strategist we'd relied on moments ago, stumbled backward, lips quivering. "He's closer than we think," she murmured. Her gaze swept the circle, narrowing on someone unseen. I realized the horrifying truth. The killer was orchestrating fear in real time, bending our perceptions, making us doubt everything, even our own instincts. By the end of day, we were no longer a group of campers. We were fragments of panic, each heartbeat synchronized with dread. Every shadow became a warning, every whisper a threat, and the forest itself seemed to pulse with the killer's silent intent. Nothing was safe. Not our tents, not our fire, not even the bond we clung to for survival. What if the person you ran to for safety was the reason you couldn't escape? The forest no longer felt like nature, it was a cage. Every branch seemed to lean toward us. Every shadow stretched like claws. I stumbled across the damp earth, chest heaving, heart hammering against my ribs as though trying to break free. Raghav, a 28-year-old survival guide with a history of leading treks, gritted his teeth, eyes scanning the dim moonlight. Calmness hid beneath his taut expression, but I could feel the tension radiating from him. "We have to move together," he said, voice firm yet brittle. "Splitting is certain death." Beside him, Ishita, 25, a wildlife biologist known for her analytical mind, whispered urgently, pointing to footprints along the riverbank. "He's predicting our every step," she murmured, fingers trembling. "Every hesitation, every misstep. It's a map for him." Then the first shock hit. A low, guttural sound, human, yet distorted, reply through the trees. We froze. A sudden flare of panic broke the fragile order. In the distance, Devansh, 27, a veteran camper with a reputation for bravery, stumbled over a moss-covered root and fell forward. His flashlight rolled across the ground, illuminating the glint of a knife buried in the dirt nearby. Everything changed in an instant. The killer wasn't merely stalking. We realized he was orchestrating, directing us, shaping our fear with precision. The forest had become his stage, and we were the unwitting actors trapped in a scene of escalating terror. Aisha, 24, a photographer documenting nocturnal wildlife, pointed shakily to the treeline. He's here," she whispered. "I saw him move, he mirrored us, shadowed every motion. He's inside the rhythm of our panic." Her words sent icy tendrils of dread curling into my spine. Raghav tried to assert control, rallying us toward a safer clearing, but the path had shifted. Fallen trees, twisted roots, and scattered gear turned our escape into a labyrinth. Even the simplest decision, step left or right, felt like choosing life or death. And then came the twist. One of us had been betrayed from within. Ishita's flashlight fell on a partially obscured tent flap. Inside, a stash of personal items from every camper, including our maps, supplies, and even notes from our phones. The killer wasn't just among us. He had been observing, cataloging, learning, infiltrating our trust for days. Panic didn't rise. It surged like wildfire. The forest erupted into chaos. Shadows moved with impossible speed. A piercing scream, distinct, close, shredded the silence, and we realized the trap wasn't just psychological. It was real. Kabir's pistol, once a symbol of hope, clicked empty as he fumbled for the safety. There was no time to aim, no time to think, only instinct, only survival. By the end of the day, we were fractured, terrified, and aware of the horrifying reality. The killer had manipulated the environment, isolated the strongest, and preyed on the vulnerable. The night had grown deeper, thicker, suffocating us in ways the daylight could never undo. And just as our hope dwindled, I glimpsed a figure slipping between trees, silent, deliberate, unseen. And the thought struck me with a cold finality. The killer wasn't just hunting bodies. He was harvesting fear, and we were his prey. A week after the funeral, the case took an unexpected turn. A woman from a neighboring village walked into the police station holding something wrapped in faded cloth. Her hands shook as she placed it on the desk, a pair of earrings caked with dried earth. She sighed that she had found them buried beneath her goat pen. The officers froze. Those earrings weren't ordinary trinkets. They had once belonged to the missing daughter, gifts she wore proudly on festival days. Their sudden reappearance wasn't just chilling, it was damning. The villagers gathered again, this time more divided than ever. Some believed the discovery meant the killer lived among them. Others muttered about old feuds, pointing fingers at families who had once quarreled over land. A matriarch stepped forward, his voice heavy with sorrow. Truth rots slower than a corpse, but when it rises, no hand can bury it again. His words left the crowd silent, the weight of suspicion sinking into every household. That night, lanterns burned outside doorsteps as parents clutched their children close. No one dared walk alone. The streets echoed with prayers, and yet, behind closed shutters, fear chewed through every heart. The police returned to the site where the earrings had been found. Under layers of mud, they unearthed more. A torn shawl, blood-stained, its threads eaten by time. Each artifact wasn't just evidence. It was a scream from the grave. But here's where the story twisted again. A retired soldier came forward, claiming he had seen a stranger weeks before the murder. A man who carried no name, no past, and no reason to linger in the village, yet somehow fade the night after the girl of aid. Who was this specter? Why had no one spoken of him before? And could he have been the missing piece in a puzzle buried beneath silence and shame? The truth wasn't crawling out quietly anymore. It was clawing its way to the surface, sharper, louder, and far more dangerous. Every trial leaves a country scarred, but this one carved deeper than most. The courtroom was silent, not out of respect, but out of disbelief. When the verdict was delivered, the air itself felt strangled. Mothers clutched their children tighter, fathers gritted their teeth, and neighbors whispered whether justice had truly lived inside those edges. The nation expected relief, but what followed was something darker. Rage disguised as mourning. Streets filled with voices demanding more. More answers, more punishment, more truth. Because behind the official ruling lay fragments no gavel could silence. Letters never released. Testimonies cut short. Names struck from records as if they'd never existed. One grandmother who had lost everything stood before cameras, her voice trembling but fierce. "Don't tell me it's over," she cried. "The dead can't speak, but we will." Her words sparked something raw, a wildfire of memory that spread across the land. Communities that had once been silent began digging up their own specters. Cases forgotten, crimes buried, evidence ignored. And yet, beneath the cries for closure, an unease lingered. People noticed something odd. The officials who handled the case seemed to fade one by one. Resignations, transfers, silent retirements, as if someone wanted the story sealed forever. But the story refused to be buried. Children still asked why their siblings never came home. Survivors still carried the weight of nights that had no dawn. And the country itself felt restless, as though the soil beneath its villages murmured back every unanswered question. So in the end, the truth didn't just belong to the courts or to the newspapers. It belonged to every trembling voice that refused silence. And while the world may move on, those who remember know this. Some wounds do not fade, and some cries resonance longer than any verdict. What happened wasn't only a crime. It was a mirror held up to a nation, forcing it to look into its own eroded reflection. And when a country looks into that abyss, it must decide whether to heal or to hide. The question remains, did the trial end the story, or simply reveal how much was never told? If you want to hear more stories that unveil what others tried to bury, make sure you subscribe to The Veil of Secret for more chilling true crime stories that uncover the darkest human secrets.